felt the need to write a Spider-Man story recently. For as much as I love comic books and superhero stories, I would put Spider-Man in the lower echelon of how into it I am. Don't get me wrong, when it hits, it absolutely hits. The Sam Raimi films, the MCU pictures, the Insomniac games, Spectacular Spider-Man, those are absolute belters. But I was never invested in checking out the comics and stories until much later, I'd say, in comparison to Batman or Constantine. But the creative juices that have been flowing in this lump of flesh that I call a brain has had this story idea I can't quite let go of. You know, it is only an idea. If only there was some way I could, share it. Might possibly expand on it. This is First Draft, a series where I share my story ideas, how I came up with them, what issues I have with them, and how I can improve upon them later. I don't know what voice this is. Now, I think it's important to share what I'm going for with this story, because context is very important. And also, it's going to sound a little boring when I say it out loud. There are 2 points I wanted to address when writing this short story. 1. Public perception of Spider-Man. And 2. How Spider-Man maintains his secret identity in the modern age of surveillance and high-speed information sharing. I really hope you can read what's on the whiteboard, because, I don't know, I like the aesthetic and I want to keep it! Some scenes that inspired me were the train scene from Spider-Man 2, where everyone promised not to reveal his secret identity, or that scene in the comics where God shows him all the people he saved from dying. But I want to make it a little less Christian. One of the main aspects of the Spider-Man story is that he is constantly being blamed and besmirched by the city of New York. Sometimes a small but vocal minority, and sometimes it is actually the entire city of New York. And that kind of aspect can get intoxicatingly negative, so it's nice to have a reminder every once in a while that what he does matters. I also believe that he cannot actually keep his identity a secret. Not wholly, and not without help. Some people would have pictures and they would have posted them on any site, maybe conspiratorial or some genuine articles. But how it doesn't go out to the public, I might actually want to explore. And that being said, whilst I did try in this idea, I'm not wholly convinced of it myself. And lastly, this will be a Spider-Man light story, where he's not really the main character. And I have a deep appreciation for stories like these. Doctor Who and Blink. The Sandman has whole storylines where he's barely involved. The Spider-Man story where it focuses on this one thug that keeps getting caught and arrested by Spider-Man. The point of these stories is to show their effect on the world around them. You can effectively show how special and important someone is by their absence and how the world reacts with and without them. And so, what do I call this story? Spider-Man, don't mention it. I snapped my chalk whilst writing that shit. It begins in black, then slowly fades in on the face of a woman with her eyes closed as she flinches at the sounds of thieves being beaten up in front of her. She opens her eyes to see all the would-be thieves sprawled around, defeated, and the colourful and heroic Spider-Man standing tall in front of them. And they talk and gab a little bit, but before she gets to say thank you, Electro dashes in through the streets. This catches the web-slinger's attention, and so he webs off. I'm gonna have to abbreviate to S-Man. And the main character says to herself, "But I didn't get to say thank you." Now, this is sort of the whole impetus thing, and I might want to change that later on, but you'll see why. Now, there are 3 names that I'm choosing for her. Harper, Beatrice, Annabeth. If anyone can tell me why I decided to pick one of these 3 names, you get a point. But for now, we're gonna stick with God damn it! Harper. Scene 2. Harper returns home to her apartment. And from your apartment and set design, that you can clearly see that she is a journalist. Now, I actually asked some journalists on Reddit what their, workstation and apartment actually looks like. And I would like to thank all of you for contributing to my weird little thing, and I'm sorry that it'll never actually see the light of day. As she turns on the TV, it goes to the Daily Bugle and their news coverage of the recent Spider-Man vs. Electro Carnage. And as you can expect, it is just basically lambasting the both of them for the carnage and havoc that they've wrecked. It cuts to one interview blaming Spider-Man for not rescuing him properly. It cuts to another person saying that Spider-Man wrecked his car, and so on and so forth. And then she shuts the TV off. I might have to invest in a whiteboard. Slightly numb, she goes on a computer or telephone, what am I, 80? Slightly numb, she goes on her phone on social media, scouring all the recent Spider-Man news, and it goes on similar tirades about how Spider-Man is a, web-crawling menace. 50 of them I expect are J. Jonah Jameson. They're not, I'm just, a little goof. But one tweet does catch her attention. I would be dead if not for Spider-Man. I hope he knows how much we do love him. This is a sort of impetus where Harper decides that she needs to let Spider-Man know how appreciated he is, and to do that, she needs to figure out who Spider-Man is. Now, I'm not wholly convinced of that idea myself, but it is the best I can think up at this moment. Hey, this is why it's called First Draft, motherfucker. I don't want to include that. From this point onwards, it becomes a sort of investigative mystery as to who Spider-Man is. She researches everything that can be found about Spider-Man. She goes on websites where Spider-Man is usually seen. She follows up reports of people that have seen Spider-Man. She's doing all the pins on a corkboard and whatnot. It's really going to be very fun. This will be a little bit nebulous right now as to how I want her investigation to go onwards. She could be looking at videos where it's like, Spider-Man caught on camera? She could be interviewing people that have been rescued by Spider-Man, and I could actually also include the charity organization Feast. It might seem a little lazy that I'm not really explaining how the investigation is going to go, and yeah, it is, but right now, that's the how. I'm not interested in the how right now. What I'm interested in is the why. If it is so, I don't want to say easy, if it's so accessible to find pictures and video evidence of Spider-Man being captured, especially when every single person currently has a camera just attached to them on their phone, then why hasn't it come out so quickly? It's the why that matters to me. After a thorough, lengthy, and due diligent investigation that was just really, really impressive, with super good writing, just really good stuff. Like the writer, he was just on a fucking belter right now. She pinpoints the possible identity of Spider-Man to a small apartment in Queens. That doesn't say Queens, that says Spider-Man. She approaches the door with slight hesitation. She knocks, and out comes Spider-Man. Or, in this case, Peter Parker. And she begins to talk. Or at least, that's what I thought would happen if I didn't struggle with this semi-monologue. See, what was meant to happen was that she would reveal that she figured out he is Spider-Man, but she wouldn't reveal it to the public. All that work she did was just to say thank you. Thank you for saving me from those thugs. If you didn't come here to save me, I don't know what would have happened. And then, as she talks, it would be intercut to different people explaining how Spider-Man saved them. You know, Spider-Man, thank you for saving me from Electro. Thank you for saving me from the Lizard. Thank you for saving me from that fall. Because of you, I'm still alive. Because of you, I get to see my kids. Because of you, I get to finish college. Because of you, I got to turn my life around. Again, she'd say thank you, and as she walks away, Peter stops her, and then he'd say, "Don't mention it." And as she exits the building, she sees Spider-Man web-slinging away, off to save another person. And then the film ends. Hooray! Now, the film kind of hinges on the emotional toll of that monologue, and if I can't get that right, I might as well have failed this script. See, as I was writing that section, I didn't know how to make it, I don't know, feel right. I didn't know how to make it flow. I didn't know how she would approach it, if you catch my drift. And I do want to figure this out, even if I don't get to make it in a while or ever. At this point, it's a challenge I just have to overcome. As a writer, there are these times where a story just falls apart because of plot holes and logical inconsistencies, but you believe in its bones and theme so badly that you want to see it come true. And there is an argument that it can be emotionally compelling while not making sense story-wise, and that is a legitimate way of enjoying media. But the logic of the scene relies on the logic of the premise, and if one of those doesn't work, the whole thing kind of collapses in on itself. Now, I am stretching the premise of this series because I do think I have figured it out. Go figure. First episode of the series and I'm already breaking rules. Now, the only solution that I can think of for now, Harper doesn't reveal that she knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. She comes in under the disguise of interviewing Peter about his charity work at Feast, and he goes on this sort of monologue about how it's not the, glitziest or glamorous job, but it's honest work, and he is proud of it. He gets to help the less fortunate, and that he won't stop until it is done. Now, Peter Parker thinks he's just talking about, Feast, but Harper, she can read between the lines, she can pick up what he's putting down. She can get the double entendre, as you can see, as the young'uns say, or, literary aficionados. The monologue will have to be reworked a little, but the main theme and idea sort of remains, I think. It's a rough outline, but, what do you think? Oh me, oh my, I forgot to explain why. Yeah, because of the sporadic and quite frankly improvisational nature of my filmmaking, I forgot to elaborate on something I mentioned earlier on in the video, a slight change I would make to the beginning of the short film, Spider-Man Don't Mention It. So that's why I'm here, after a couple months of, quite frankly, long procrastination and a slight mental health crisis. A small change would be, in the beginning of the short film, just before he webs off, he would say, "Hey, don't mention it." Now, I'm not just putting it in the beginning of the short just for the audience to have a, he said it moment. Okay, admittedly, I kind of am, but only because I get to change the meaning of it later on. When Spider-Man says it in the beginning, it comes off as a sort of humble shrugging off, or at least being distracted whilst he goes to fight Electro. And then when he says it at the end of the short film, the phrase, "don't mention it," carries more weight. That he doesn't do it for praise or for glory. He does it because it's the right thing to do, like a calling or a vocation. That's how he can shrug it off so easily, because it's not really necessary. At least in my interpretation of the character. Or alternatively, people can view it as a tongue-in-cheek, hey, please don't share my secret, knowing that she won't actually share his identity. Plus, it works as an answer to the question of how he manages to keep his identity a secret in this current day of high-speed information sharing. It's because he trusts them, and they in turn trust him, because he has earned that trust time and time again, at least to the people that actually see it. To put it simply, his identity is a secret because they just don't mention it. Admittedly, it is a little tricky trying to judge something where it's basically bones, but I hope I illustrated what I'm trying to go for with this story. So, is there anything you liked? Is there anything you disliked? Is there anything I could have delved into deeper? Not the investigation part. My name is Rigel Alombro, and this was my first draft.